Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Pokies Burke, and this is the Career Slay podcast. Imagine the impact we could have on society if everyone loved what they did. That's what Career Slay is all about. I'm interviewing people who love their jobs and asking them how they got there and what they've learned along the way. We're here to slay the fear in career. Dr. Gary Orosy is an Adjunct Professor of Marketing at Southern Methodist University Cox School of Business in Dallas, Texas. At SMU, he teaches undergraduates and MBA students and is an expert in marketing tech topics. Prior to teaching, Gary spent decades in global marketing assignments in over 40 countries for companies like Procter Gamble, Gillette, and Frito-Lay. After his commercial experience, he pursued a consulting career as a senior partner with A.T. Kearney before forming his own firm, where he still consults and coaches clients today. Gary attended Rutgers College for his undergrad degree, Cornell University for an MBA, and recently earned a Doctor of Business Administration degree from the University of Florida. I first met Dr. Gary Orosy when he asked me to present a case study to his marketing class at SMU. And after I presented, his students asked me more questions about my career rather than the actual content. And that experience became one of the reasons for starting this podcast. So thank you, Gary. Fast forward to today, I was thrilled to interview Gary and learn more about his exciting trilogy of a career in marketing, consulting, and academia. What I love about this episode is how he shares advice on pivoting in your career and setting that bar high to challenge yourself. Gary proves that careers are adaptable, and you don't have to box yourself into just one path. You can always rebrand your career. Welcome to Career Slay, Gary.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Let's just dive right in. Tell us your story. What were you like as a child?
Yeah, my family were first immigrants from abroad, and they emigrated to Canada. I was born on the south end of Lake Ontario and grew up there till I was about 7 years old. About every year and a half, we moved somewhere else, back into the States, Connecticut, Chicago. The one thing I learned how to do was meet people because, about every year and a half, we'd be at a different school, a different town, a different home. And I just got used to, going up to folks and saying hi and making friends. So that's been a lifelong skill that I kind of attribute back to those dynamics.
That's awesome. Where did you decide to go to college?
Yeah, so I went to Rutgers College, the State University of New Jersey. I started there my freshman year. I thought I was going to be a doctor. I loved science and then discovered the amount of studying and so forth a little bit more than I wanted to sign up for. So I changed my major to business, and I found I love business. Mm-hmm. And I found marketing at that point and IT. Yeah,
so it's kind of funny that you wanted to be a doctor and then it comes full circle, and we'll get to it, but it comes full circle that you actually are a doctor now.
Well, you might say that, although my wife says, don't put doctor in front of your name because you're not really a doctor. Not a real
Still
doctor.
Call 911 if there is an emergency.
Exactly.
And that kicked off a career in marketing, right?
It did, yeah. I went directly from undergrad at Rutgers to Cornell University for my MBA up in nice Ithaca, New York, mm-hmm. and spent 2 years there. And then from there, matriculated to my first job. My wish all along had been to be a consumer marketer. Mm-hmm. And Procter Gamble, of course, was, the kind of penultimate place where you could practice that marketing, and they had the technologies and the skills and the brands. So I joined the food business in 1977 and spent a year managing coffee brands and some of their cooking oil brands. And Procter Gamble has a process where after a year as a brand assistant, you go out on sales training. Mm-hmm. For 3 months to see what it's like to sell the product to the trade. So I was fortunate enough to be signed to San Francisco for 3 months. And an interesting thing happened. I was into computers, right? Yeah. And at that point, the first Apple II computers were just selling. Mm-hmm. And so I wandered out one day onto Geary Street in San Francisco, and I happened upon the Geary Street radio and TV repair shop. And sitting there was an Apple II computer. So I walked in, and a young man my age greeted me, and I said, "Hey, you guys are selling Apple II computers?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I'd like to get one." So I bought one on a Friday afternoon. Turns out that with the purchase of the computer, I got basic programming skill lessons every Saturday morning.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, by this time I knew a few programming languages from Rutgers, but I thought, well, here's where I am. And he said, well, welcome. I think there are 5 or 6 of us. Welcome. And we, have like 6, 7 weeks of basic programming training. And I'd like to introduce you to your instructor, my roommate, Steve Wozniak.
What?
And, at that point, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, Steve Wozniak and this hobby computer thing and that kind of stuff. So about 3 weeks in, Wozniak, says, hey, guys, if you have a chance, my business partner would like to join us for lunch. We usually went off to a little sandwich shop and talk a little bit about what you think about our product. And so we arrive, and there's Steve Jobs. And Steve introduces himself, and who are you? And I'm a guy from Procter Gamble. So Steve and I would sit at the end of the table, and after we got done talking computers and our experience in class that day, et cetera, he'd go, well, what do you do at Procter Gamble about brands and this and that? So I never got offered a job. I don't think they were in a position to do that, but it was just really kind of an interesting circumstance very early on to have had that interaction.
That's an incredible story. And I love how Steve Jobs is the one asking you about brand marketing.
Yeah. He could have taught me a lot more later in life, but at that point
maybe you taught him all he knows.
Yeah. Do I get a royalty for that, do you think?
Yeah, maybe. That's so funny. For those who aren't familiar, how would you explain marketing super simply?
You want the academic version?
Yes, I'll take the academic version.
Or the professional commercial version. Marketing is identifying the wants, needs, and preferences of a target group of customers, and then making a product or service that fits those needs and preferences to the greatest degree that you can. In exchange for they're paying you to have that available to them.
Yeah, I see it as driving value for people.
Yeah, no, that's another good way to put it. Yeah, how do you get the value? Is understanding what people want.
Exactly. So, what did you do after Procter & Gamble?
Yeah, I had been a brand manager at P&G for about 1.5 years, and I decided that I wanted to get into a different culture, so I went to work for Frito-Lay. It was kind of an interesting time. They were still expanding distribution. Snack sales were growing across the country. I started by managing the pretzel brands and some of the variety pack, and then got onto the core brands and managed Fritos and Lay's potato chips. Eventually made another move about 3 years later into Nabisco, and then worked for them for 7 years. So between crackers, cookies, snacks, my wife tells me that I'm singularly responsible for the obesity problem in this country. So.
Well, they do say, when you join Frito-Lay, there's something called the Frito 15 because you're getting, you gain like 15 pounds from sampling all the items that you're selling.
So true. Yeah, so I managed that for a while. I became a strategic planning manager for the division, and then got promoted to a director of marketing of a category of that business. I had an opportunity to join the international division, and I traveled the world for a number of years managing their few billion-dollar global snack business. And we basically bought companies up in countries that we were trying to expand distribution into. So that got me to about 25, 30 different countries.
Wow.
Yeah. I had a passport with like 3 pullouts because there were so many stamps in them. When you fill it up, they just give you another pullout. So.
Do you know any other languages or?
Well, I'll tell you how that one went. So I'm sitting on a Sunday in Bangkok, and a phone call comes, and it's the senior VP of finance, and he goes, hey, listen, you've been traveling around, and I think we've got a lot of this under control now, and we bought 3 companies in Spain that we're trying to merge together. The general manager there has been with us a while. He wants to retire. How's your Spanish? And I said, I don't know any Spanish. And he says, you'll learn. So a few weeks later, I reported to Berlitz and spent many hours learning Spanish very quickly. I started as commercial director for a while, and then after I got command of the language a bit, then I became general manager for 1.5 years.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was the kind of a really good time in Spain. It was in the early 90s on the way to the 92 Olympics and World's Fair in Barcelona, and the country was joining the EU, so it was very, very high level of positive emotions going through the country, and the economy was really booming and all. So it was a pleasure being there.
What did you do after that? It's kind of hard to top traveling the world and jet setting. And
yeah, some people think international travel is about jet setting until you're sitting on a plane for 16 hours. We moved back to the Boston area. Gillette had fended off a couple of LBO attempts to buy them out. It was the time when they decided to innovate to survive. So they launched the first Gillette sensor razor. From the time I arrived to the time we were up and running with BBD&O, Porter Novelli, and other Marcom agencies, we launched into 24 countries in 18 months.
Oh, wow.
So it was a very successful thing, very fast-paced, very smart, and very detailed marketers, craftsmen in many ways of that product. So, you learn a little bit of some different things at every company you're at.
Yeah.
I think Procter Gamble is very much about strategy. I think Frito-Lay is very much about getting things done and moving in the marketplace and being aggressive. I think the global thing was more about learning how to set goals for the company and make the right choices to meet those goals. And then Gillette was really about craftsmanship and product design and perfection, I would think, is probably a good word.
Yeah. So that was you had an incredible marketing career, and that was your first career.
That was number one. Yeah.
That was number one.
Yeah.
We still have two to get through. So what did you do after marketing, and why did you decide to make a pivot?
Yeah, so sometimes people can either live and enjoy the corporate life and the process and kind of all that. As I say, I was sort of a breakthrough innovator, and so that got a little tedious for me. So I wanted to be able to see more and do more in different environments. So I joined Computer Science Corporation as a consultant, and I was one of their front-end consultants. So I did things like, how do you estimate demand and so forth. It was the uptick to the internet, and so we were out helping clients figure out, well, what does this do for your supply chain, and how do you integrate your IT and your SAPs and all that into planning systems with internet support. So I spent a few years there, became a partner, and then A.T. Kearney came out and hired me to join A.T. Kearney. So I was in the consumer retail practice.
And this is consulting.
This was, all consulting as a partner.
What was the difference between kind of being within the corporate space versus being a consultant?
Yeah, so in the corporate space, you tend to have maybe a long-term view, and you're building towards some goal. Maybe you want to be the leader of the category, right? And so you continually push for that goal, and you adjust and maybe minorly pivot depending on how you have to position, reposition, renew. As a consultant, you're there for short term. You have a project. The advantage of being a consultant is, you break a lot of, the not invented here and the groupthink because, you're being paid to bring that idea in.
So how long did you spend in consulting?
I've been in consulting probably about 35 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, on and off, different kind of companies and different environments.
Wow.
After A.T. Kearney, I went through a life change. I got remarried, and my wife worked for Adobe out in Silicon Valley. So we lived out there in California, and it's a very exciting place. And then one day we sat back and we just decided that, Silicon Valley was a lot of fun, but maybe something different, and we were working on a family. So we did an interesting thing and made a decision to move to Dallas. That was 17, 18 years ago. Mm-hmm. I went on my own, and I've consulted with Mary Kay and Alcon and a number of other large companies in the area before starting my academic career.
So this takes us to career number 3, academia. So started in corporate America, moved into consulting, and then it sounds like you did a stint at a startup. So tell us, why did you decide to go into higher education?
Yeah, so it kind of grew. I live up outside of Denton, and I got to meet some of the folks at the University of North Texas in the marketing department, and they said, hey, if you got extra time, why don't you teach a course for us? So I started with 1, and then pretty soon I was up to 3, and 4.5, 5 years later, I was teaching, 12 courses a year in marketing and sales management and all that, and I enjoyed it. But then I thought, well, maybe there's, other places I could teach. So back to my business school colleague, knew some of the people at SMU, and he said, why don't you get in touch with the folks there? So I sent my resume over, and I had an audition before the associate dean and the department chairman. Yeah, think about that. You're like, I'm going to audition. I haven't done this in ages. And now this is my 7th year teaching. I teach undergrads in all kinds of marketing classes, including fundamentals of marketing, which is a required course for business majors. I teach sales and channel management course, international marketing class. I teach another course in pricing to MBAs and in global marketing, which is sort of the international marketing part for MBAs. About 3.5 years ago, I decided, hey, I need another challenge. I think I missed a couple of things along the way. So 3.5 years ago, I looked around at the DBA programs. PhD programs are really for career academics, and you really do that in your 20s.
Okay.
And, you go up to, hopefully get tenure and all that. But, for folks that are commercially focused and then want to get into academia, Doctor of Business Administration degrees are really the place. So I looked at the universities that offered them, and the University of Florida in Gainesville, the Gators, was the highest ranked school that offered a DBA program. Mm-hmm. And so I started there. We had a 2-week boot camp, 2 years of instruction, going to Gainesville twice a term for these power weekends.
And you were working during this time too.
Yeah,
right.
I was teaching and consulting at the same time, yeah. So I finished that, and then I had a dissertation to write. They gave me a year to do it, and my dissertation was, do you trust Alexa with your most personal and private questions?
And the answer is?
Well, it depends who you ask. I ran a survey of my target audience are millennials. Yeah. So I ran a survey with 100 students, and they said, oh, no way. We don't at all. And then I did an experiment where you actually ask these questions with 500 people, millennial age, in the general population, and they said, oh, yeah. We trust Alexa with just about any question we want to ask. So, it's all intent versus behavior. We learn in marketing. I intend not to do this, but sometimes you do.
So what drove you to keep finding new opportunities in your career?
Once I mastered a particular role in the organization and kind of excelled and figured it all out, I was looking for the next opportunity to challenge me. And in the corporate world, as a brand manager, you're going to spend a lot of time, doing strategic planning and business plans over and over. And to me, that just, didn't seem to challenge me in the way that I wanted to. Consulting gave me the opportunity to work in a lot of different environments for a lot of different cultures with a lot of different people on a lot of different projects, some of which I walked in needing to learn an awful lot about. And so that part invigorated me, to dive in and learn and find out how to go about coming up with a successful solution. And in academia, in addition to this sort of doctoral degree as a way to improve myself, I started off as a instructor. And, I read my evaluations and got feedback from my students, and I just kept working to improve my personal approach and the way I design my classes and the content that I teach. So, again, just looking for ways to continually be better at what I do.
It's having that growth mindset.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say is the most rewarding part of your job today?
I think that would have changed over those three career stints. I think in the first part, I would have said the fact that I could drive businesses and grow those businesses, that would be a sense of accomplishment, goal achievement, pride. In my consulting career, I would have said, the most satisfying part would be to see that I enable the organizations that I'm consulting for to do better, the people that I'm working with, the teams, to grow and gain skills that I can help teach them or show them or help them learn. And now that I teach students, is to see the gleam in a few of those students' eyes of just opening up a world for them that could be a career possibility, through an example or a case we've discussed or something that they go, it clicks all of a sudden. And sometimes I get emails from former students who say, hey, that exercise we did, I used it today. And boy, it really worked well. So that's kind of where I get my personal value now, is in giving back to these students and watching them become the people they want to be.
Yeah, I love that. And I remember speaking to your class the first time, and after that experience, I walked out and just kind of came off of this high, because it's really invigorating to talk to young people who have just the world of possibility in front of them, and just give them a little bit of advice. Yeah.
Many enter the business school without really an idea what major. I mean, some kids wake up at 3 years old and say, this is what I want to do. Yeah. But a lot of students don't. And they get to school and they go, I think I have an inclination toward, a particular major. And then they take these courses and they go, maybe there's something else I want to do. And if you can help them get that initial decision, careers, are adaptable.
Yeah.
Right. And, you just kind of start in one place, but, you got to do what you really like.
So looking back, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Yeah, I was thinking about that because I knew that kind of question would be. Yeah. I think as I look back at my career, I probably would have stayed longer in a couple of the organizations that I was in, and learning more before I moved on. It was a period of time when marketers, were highly sought after, and recruiting was fast and furious. And, I don't think I lost much, but I think I could have gained more if I did that. And I think that's important now, because when you look at the data, the millennials and the Zs expect 10 to 12 job positions in their career. And, maybe you think, that's okay for some people. But maybe, if you're making friendships and, you're building a career, you learn from mistakes, and, you kind of grow through them, and that takes time.
Yeah. So how do you know when is the right time to pivot?
Yeah, I think it's up to the person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you've got to be choiceful and consider why you're pivoting, and not be reactionary. Maybe you're just really annoyed at the situation in your company right now. Organizational changes occurred. You got new leadership, a new boss. The chemistry's not wonderful. Do you say, well, that's it, I'm out of here? Or do you say, I can learn in the tough and uncomfortable times as much as I can learn in the good times. And so if I hang in there, as long as it's not malicious or anything, right, that maybe there's something to that experience that'll grow you.
Wow, that's great advice. So why is it important to find meaningful work or purpose in your career?
You got to wake up every day. And my day usually starts between 4:30 and 5, and usually ends fairly late, but you got to do what you want. And one of the things I liked about marketing so much is if I created something like a product, I'd see it on the shelf. If I help with the agency's assistants and all that, put a new commercial out there, I saw it on TV. And, you get joy out of that. Other people get joy, from being a doctor, or from, being a psychologist and giving advice and helping people through things. But, my joy is, at least had been in creating and inventing and developing. And, I woke up energized every day to go do that. When I found myself in unenergized environments, I felt repressed and not real happy. But again, you make a choice. Do I grow through this and see what happens on the other side? Or, do I seek greener grass? And it's not always greener when you get there.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're both in marketing, and being able to create something and then see it out in the world, it's really energizing. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And I always find that, like, when you find what it is that you're meant to do, it gives you a lot of energy. Certainly there's ups and downs and highs and lows, but for the most part, you're doing work that's meaningful in whatever way that's meaningful to you, right?
I agree, yeah. And if in the end it serves people,
Yeah.
then that's what you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you had to sum up your career in 3 words, what would that be?
Maybe something like continually setting a higher standard and then pushing myself to get there.
Wow, love that. Well, Gary, this has been such a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on Career Slay, and I'm super excited for your students to hear this episode as well.
Yeah, good. I'll refer it all to them. Maybe I'll put a quiz on it to make sure. Oh yeah, Professor, we listened to it.
Well, thanks, Gary.
You bet. Thank you.
The Career Slay podcast is a co-production of Career Slay and Wild Reply, produced by Michael Burke. If you like the show, subscribe and give us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. New episodes drop every other Tuesday, so stay tuned for some great conversations on slaying the fear in career.